believe I am live. Am I live? What is going on with my camera? I think I'm live. Am I live? Looks like I'm live. Big fuzz. I don't know what's going on. You know what? That's my glasses. Well, anyhow, welcome to A Creative Healing Place. My name is Benjamin Blackett, Life Mastery Consultant, Motivational Speaker, and Transcendence Facilitator. You have found your way to my morning mindset book study. We are starting a brand new book today. And I know there were some of you looking for me on Friday, and as we finished up Communion with God on Thursday, I just don't like beginning books on Friday, so I took the day off on Friday. So for those of you who are looking for me, my apologies. In the meantime, here I am today, and we have for today The Physics of God by Joseph Selbie. He says on the cover of this book how the deepest theories of science explain religion and how the deepest truths of religion explain science. I think this is going to be a good book. I'm looking forward to it. I was looking through it the other day before we began, ended Communion with God, and at the time, good morning Allah, good morning MJ. At the time, I have to say, I was having a little bit of trepidation about the book. I know I offered it as something, and because I offered it, that's what we're doing. Especially because you all chose that this is what you would like next. But I was like, ooh, I don't know. This seems like it could be a lot. But I got to looking at some of the comments about it and looking into the forward, and I thought, you know what? I think this is going to be fun. And here's the thing, we always get to decide what's fun or not, anyhow, for our lives, right? So anyhow, this morning we have The Physics of God. Welcome to The Physics of God. We start with the dedication to this book. It was published first copyrighted in 2001, so right around the same time that Neil Donald Walsh was publishing his Communion with God. He had just, I think we had Conversations with God published first in 1995. So all those books had been out, the first three books had been out for a couple of years, but Communion with God only just published the same year, and of course, as I said before, Neil has gone on to publish many other books since then. Anyhow, I think this will highly complement what we've just been reading and studying. The dedication starts in, well, I don't have a page number. It's a Roman number, probably. It's even before the table of contents. Dedication. This book is dedicated to all the scientists who have courageously explored outside the unofficial boundaries of scientific materialism, and to the saints, mystics, and near-death experiences who have engagingly shared their transcendent experiences of realities beyond the material. Experiencers, not experiences, excuse me. And when I'm reading you these books, I start way at the beginning with all this stuff because I think it's all significant. It all prepares us for the text. If we look at these as texts, something to study, something to be with, then the value of all these, the dedications, the acknowledgments, the forewords, the introductions, they're all of value to us, right? So, acknowledgments. I would like to thank my many friends and well-wishers who encouraged me by saying, I can't wait to read it. And by the way, if you've got a project going on and you've got people telling you, I can't wait to read it or I can't wait to experience it, then the project is, that's encouragement. Listen to that. It's for you. It helped keep me going through the occasional fourth rewrite of an entire chapter. Special thanks to Amit Goswami for generosity helping me join the club. Heartfelt thanks to the two editors, Prakash Van Cleve, who through his edits is always patiently teaching me the art of clarity, and Sharon Dorr, former editor of quest books, whose astute questions made the book even clearer. To MCYS, AS, and CS, who must be initials for his family members, you didn't know it, but you helped a lot. I had mental conversations with all of you to see if you would find my arguments convincing. As far as I could tell, you did. And last, I want to give my loving thanks to my wife, Lakshmi, my first reader and insightful critic. I always looked forward to her saying, while I read the chapter, I knew the ensuing conversation would be lively. And this is also, if you are an author, if you're attempting to become an author, know that it doesn't all pour out on the first write, on the first pen to paper, right? There's more and more and more we can learn as we go through our process. Table of Contents afforded begins on page XI. Joseph Selbie's The Physics of God is unique and welcome addition to the growing literature of scientific evidence for God. Why is this important? To begin with, it runs counter to a misconceived bias that has dominated scientific thought now for several centuries. In the 17th century, Isaac Newton gave us a mathematical science that all but eliminated the idea of God intervening in the material world of physics and chemistry. In the same century, another scientist, René Descartes, laid the foundation for championing the use of reason to develop the natural sciences. Ever since then, and following the prevalent notion of Christianity actually, Western scientists have generally held the notion that animals are machines. This intellectual attitude stands true even today. That is, almost. In the 19th century, Charles Darwin's theory of biological evolution suggested that living beings have a hereditary component, which we now recognize as genes, that undergoes changes called mutation. Through the process of natural selection, nature selects among these variations those that help the species to adapt to the ever-changing environment. In time, the process leads to speciation. Speciation. What a great word. Since Western science maintained that animals are machines, and Darwin was saying that we are descendants of monkeys, doesn't it follow that humans are machines too? So just before I get too much farther, that whole thing of Isaac Newton and the thing of Descartes, it was illegal in the church, as far as the church was concerned. You think of back in the 17th century, right? The whole idea of the study of science was so blasphemous. One couldn't do that until Descartes came along and separated the idea of man and spirit. So that was a big thing, and because of that, right? Because he declared that there was this discovery that this mind, right, has that thing, that this individuation of ideas. He said, I think, therefore I am, which is interesting because, of course, with I am that I am, we talk about this I am. We have been talking about I amness. Of course, that is part of the proof of spirit as we understand it today. But in the time, it was, this whole idea of God being this entity that we had to be subservient to, right? And so therefore, doing any investigation was not condoned by the church. Anyhow, just a little side note. So when later genes were experimentally discovered and even the structure of the DNA molecule of which genes are part was figured out, the view grew that biology is nothing but an extension of chemistry. Biologists and most other scientists with them assumed that everything about life will sooner or later be unraveled by the science of biology, leaving nothing for God to do. This is interesting, right? God's intervention, even in the affairs of the living, seemed to have been ruled out. And so with Descartes' beginning discoveries, right? There was this walk away, and science itself walked away from God, if you will. In the 20th century, a few scientists, Einstein for example, held on to the idea of a benign God in what is called the philosophy of deism. But the notion that God is dead took hold in the scientific mainstream that soon promulgated the idea of a new philosophy by which to do science, scientific materialism. This philosophy says that every phenomenon is a material phenomenon in space and time caused by material interaction. There is nothing but matter. So this is what we've been living under for the past 100 years or so, right? This philosophy is clearly a dogma. Selbie calls it a religion, correctly, I think. So that in itself is a religion, right? We've made science its own separate religion. It has given humanity a polarized perspective, torn between God and the materialist science. The world over, and specifically with dire consequences in America. Selbie addresses this polarization directly and adroitly, showing how science and religion, far from being incompatible, share a deep congruence. So this is the study that we're getting into. I think this sounds exciting. I don't know how it sounds for you, but for me, I think it sounds exciting. Excuse me. Scientific materialists thought seriously through much of the 20th century that life itself would be produced in the laboratory from non-living matter, putting the whole question of whether God is needed or God or not to rest. Unfortunately, despite biology's many spectacular successes, the questions of what is life and can life be produced from non-life have remained unanswered. So this is what science has sought to ask, and still the questions remains unanswered. Meanwhile, Darwin's theory itself has come under fire with revelations that suggest that it really does not explain the details of available fossil data. Other compelling data exist against scientific materialism. So, in scientific materialism, all communication is local via signals. But as this author and many others have discussed, there is much evidence in favor of a signal-less, that is, a non-local communication both in the micro and the macro domain of matter. And this is where we start getting in the spirit, right? Among such signal-less communications are distance viewing and near-death experiences. Especially the latter is spectacular. The evidence proves that there is consciousness even after the brain dies. There is consciousness even after the brain dies. This is spectacular, and this is proof of one of the things that I have brought forward for us several times in many different books that we've read, that we, of course, are luminous light beings, right? We are luminous light beings that are eternal. So there is this piece of us, this spirit piece, that exists in spite of this body, right? And isn't it funny? We start, I'm wearing a t-shirt that says Quantum Mind. Quantum Mind. This is about science. This is about physics, quantum physics, right? This is about the proof that God is and that science are both correct. I love this. This is kind of fun. Okay. And as I say that, here comes the next sentence. Listen to this next sentence. I just noticed that shirt. See, we're all connected. It's like Twilight Zone. Ever see that show, The Twilight Zone? Anybody remember that? Wasn't that a fun show? And all of that really, I think, had great commentary in the end about how there is connection, right? That science and spirit do exist together. Anyhow, the evidence proves that there is consciousness even after the brain dies. So consciousness has to occur even before the brain exists, right? That's the truth. One of my favorites, right, MJ? Yes. Twilight Zone was so fun to watch. It was one of my favorites of all time. When I discovered that, made sure I saw it every night when I could. Anyhow, that was back before you could do this, what do they call it, binge watching of TV. Anyhow, some of the most compelling evidence against scientific materialize, the sentence I was going to read next, some of the most compelling evidence against scientific materialism has come from quantum physics, the latest paradigm of physics that has replaced Newtonian physics. So here's the thing, this has replaced Newtonian physics, and yet here, 20 years later, many of us still don't even know that. Many of us still don't even know about it, right? Thank you for... MJ, God, I love how you always bring me back to breathing. You're so good. Ah, yes, the breathing is good. Anyhow. Anybody want to breathe with me? Take a couple of deep breaths in. Let's breathe in through the nose. Then blow out through the mouth. Take another breath in through the nose. And blow out through the mouth. One more breath in through the nose. And blow out through the mouth. And this is in fact why I love the fact, MJ, that you bring me back to the breath all the time. Is this breathing. It is the, and as we talk about this book, as we go into this, I will mention this, I'm sure, more than once, but one of the things that we have come to is that God is as near as that next breath. That is where Spirit indwells us, right, in this breathing form. It is the inhale, it is the exhale. So, as I was starting to say, the whole thing of the quantum physics, right? The quantum physics is all new and has replaced Newtonian physics, and yet even though that's true, most of the world does not know that yet. There are still so many people who are operating under Newtonian physics thinking that is the end-all be-all. And quantum physics has really blown the lid off of that. And the truth is when we study the quantum physics, the reality of how much that has blown it off is really spectacular. So let me try this whole paragraph again. It says some of the most compelling evidence against scientific materialism has come from quantum physics, the latest paradigm of physics that has replaced Newtonian physics. In quantum physics, objects are waves of possibility that reside in a domain of reality called the domain of potentiality, where communication is instantaneous, without signal, non-local. So communication is instantaneous. Oh, this is going to be fun. I think we're going to have... I love this. Okay, love to you, MJ, and sorry that's... you will, and it's a delight that you're here to begin with. This domain must be outside the realms of space and time where locality reigns. Non-local phenomena are referred to as paranormal by the mainstream scientists, but that designation is obviously prejudiced in light of quantum physics. So mainstream scientists, and there's this rift actually going on, right? And here's the thing, mainstream scientists are fighting for their life, if you will, of it just being mainstream science. And because quantum physics is taking on a whole new look, right? It's making mainstream science look entirely different. Excuse me. So, if the philosophy of scientific materialism is wrong, can we conclude that God does exist? God does exist. Does it mean that God is scientifically verifiable? That there is, in fact, a physics of God? Selbie makes a concise and convincing case that there is. He draws from the transcendent testimony of mystics the world over, as well as from the findings of strong theory. David Bohm's version of quantum physics, quantum biology, neuroscience, and quantum physics itself to demonstrate that a physics of God is at hand. This is revolutionary, I think, and this is fascinating for us. And and we are going to pause there because we're at 19 and change. And if I go on to the next paragraph, I'm going to bring us way over. So let's not go way over. But I'm delighted to be here with you with another book. What fun. Those of you who join me, who are joining me for the first time, if you're joining me for the first time, not to worry. This is great news for you that you are joining me for the first time. This is a great place to join into this book, The Physics of God. I think we are in for some fantastic information, and those of you who have been following me with the other books that I've been reading, you'll find that this all interlinks, interlaces, and actually proves the validity of all the other books that we have been reading. So I'm pretty thrilled that you're here with me. So that all being said, what do I have for you? I will be back tomorrow, 9:05 Eastern Daylight Time, to continue reading. And wherever you are in the world, I hope you are having an amazing day. And, if this all sounds great to you and you're like, what's this got to do with me and how does it help me make my life better? Well, let's have a conversation. I'd be happy to help you with that. And I love to close out with good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, because I don't know what time it is in the world where you are when you're tuning in. But that you are tuning in makes me happy. And I congratulate you for that too, because this takes a little something, something. In the meantime, I hope you have an amazing day. Ala and MJ, I'm glad you were both here. MJ, I know you have run away, but you'll catch this in the very end of it. And I hope you have an amazing day wherever you are doing whatever you're doing. And ciao for now. Okay, bye-bye.